All right. Good morning and welcome everyone to our webinar on becoming a better leader. This webinar is brought to you by JER HR Group and our Trainery Brand Solutions. JER HR Group is a national human resource firm with over 30 years of experience in providing compensation consulting, employee learning, organizational development. Thank you for doing the slide, Liz. I appreciate that. And HR services and support for 300 plus clients nationwide. Our team of staff and consultants work collaboratively with our clients to develop and provide customized solutions that align with client needs and strategies. Let's see here. If you'll go to the next slide.
Yep.
Our Trainery Brand Solutions offer a suite of products of e-learning, workforce training, and talent management that help HR departments to optimize employee skill sets, knowledge, productivity, and employee experience. So I don't want this to become too salesy. She's going to be going into your webinar, but if you are interested in learning more about any of these post-webinar, you can contact us, and that's info@jerhrgroup.com or info@trainery.com. After the webinar, you will receive a recording of this as well as a copy of the PowerPoint presentation by email. And this morning's presenter is Liz Summers. I'll turn it over to Liz to get us started and do an introduction.
Great. Thank you so much, Kayla. Hi, I'm Liz Summers. I am a senior consultant with JER HR Group. I've been with the organization about 11 years, and I'm so excited to be with you today to talk about my favorite topic, leadership, and also one of my very favorite assessments, work of leaders. I have utilized this assessment with hundreds of people. And what's fascinating is it doesn't matter what kind of organization, it's been across the board. So with nonprofits, with corporations, financial institutions, hospitality, municipalities. So it really doesn't matter. There are leaders everywhere, right? So it's a wonderful tool. And I love it because it's a very robust tool in the fact that if you look at it and go through it, you could pick it up 3 months later and it still all makes sense. It's very detailed and gives you all the information you need. So I'm excited to be here with you today to talk about that. I think when we think about leadership today, self-awareness is so important to understand how we see the world, how we process things, and also how other people perceive us. Things are, I don't know about you, but in this urgency-based culture, we need to be as effective as possible. And so if we can streamline effectiveness of our teams, if we can communicate more effectively, it's a benefit in today's world. John Maxwell has a great quote that I love. He says, "To grow yourself, you must know yourself." And Work of Leaders is a great tool to be able to do that. Interestingly, today, an article was shared with me just this morning, which I thought was very timely, on leadership. It's from the Gallup organization, and it says that leadership training is crucial to organizational success. Each leader's capacity for achievement is the result of two things: natural talent, which we know, combined with intentional development. And that's where a lot of organizations fall flat. They don't share the intentional development. So here are 3 key stats that I wanted to share with you. When employees strongly agree that they trust their leadership of their organization, they're 4 times as likely to be engaged. The second is that employees who strongly agree that leaders help them see how changes today will affect their organization in the future are 7.5 times as likely to feel connected to the company culture. I don't know about you, but change is inevitable. So it's happening. So if we can have strong leadership, people are much more willing to be on board. And this is the final bullet I think is really powerful. When employees strongly agree that the leadership of their organization communicates effectively with the rest of the company, they are 73% less likely to feel burned out. 73%. And it's important. We want to retain our employees. We don't want them to feel burned out. So this is just I thought it was a timely reminder about the very importance of leadership development and why it matters. So let's take a look of our quick agenda today. We will be talking about some of the benefits, my top 5 of an effective team, the role of courage in today's leadership and today's workplaces. We'll do an introduction of the actual Work of Leaders assessment, so you'll get a chance to know that a little bit more. And then we will share some special opportunities because you're a part of this webinar. We have some special opportunities for you. And then we will leave a minute or two at the end for Q&A, for some questions and answers. So before we dive in, I wanted to ask you and want to hear from you, and I want to see if I think, okay, yes, I was going to say if the chat, I think we're going to have to use the Q&A, which is okay, but I'd like you to consider, I'd like to hear from you in the room. There's a lot of knowledge here. What is your, when you think about your leadership challenges, what do you find most challenging about being a leader? And if you can put that in the Q&A, because I think our chat was having some trouble, what do you find most challenging about being a leader? Some of you, it may be retaining good employees. Some of you, it may be working with lots of different personalities, but what's most challenging for you as a leader? You can drop it in the Q&A. Feeling like an imposter. Thank you for sharing. Working with different personalities, being pulled in multiple directions. Absolutely. I think we can all relate to all of this. Different personalities, tough conversations. Yeah, tough conversations are hard. Recruitment, getting them in the door in the first place. Understanding all the categories I need to understand deeply. Balancing relationships with discipline versus support. Having enough time to train, not being able to please everyone, managing underperforming employees, wearing too many hats and quickly having to shift gears. I think we can all relate to that. Does anyone have plenty of time to do everything? No. Mentoring, managing different levels and motivation, tough employees. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I hope you see that many of you, the challenges you have are not unique to just you. These are very common. The second question I would like to pose is, what would you like to see more of in your leadership? When you think about the leadership of the organization, whether that's you as the CEO or just in leadership in general, what are some things you would like to see more of in your leaders? Again, you can drop that in the Q&A. Boundaries. Yeah, that can be tricky. Yeah. And Carrie had said, making decisions when you can't share the full information. Compassion and empathy, ability to coach, better communication, ownership, compassionate understanding. Again, someone said understanding the intangible value, empathy, listening, open communication, empathy, listening. Yeah, we all want to be heard, right? We definitely all want to be heard. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important when we think about this urgency-based culture we're in. It's really hard to balance it all and to get to it all. So let's take a look at, it wants to freeze when I moved. When we think about effective teams, right? We just talked about some of the things we want in our leadership. Why does it matter? Why do we need effective leadership? Why do we need effective teams to get things done? Well, first and foremost, it helps the bottom line, whether that's your profit margin, or if you're a nonprofit, maybe that is your mission, is can you accomplish the mission? It helps the organization's bottom line, bar none, if you can have effective teams who can work together effectively. That's where work leaders can be so helpful. Number 2, it helps reduce drama and conflict in the workplace. When I say conflict isn't always a bad thing. There can be such a thing as productive conflict, right? That's often how meaningful change happens. I'm talking about the unproductive, the soul-sucking conflict and the drama that forces people to work in silos, not to work together. If you've ever had a lot of drama in the workplace, maybe you felt like you had to walk on eggshells, or you just didn't even want to raise your hand with an idea because, oh gosh, I'll get shot down or what have you. So when we can work together and communicate effectively and we have strong leadership, it greatly reduces, I'm not going to say it takes it all away, but it can greatly reduce the drama and conflict that we have in the workplace. The third is it inspires innovation. When we're all just, nose to the grindstone and not looking up, we don't get a chance to think about new ways of doing things, or we're afraid to mention it because it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. So if we can communicate, we can have some of those hard conversations, we can share ideas, we can dramatically increase the innovation that we have in the workplace, which is so important in today's world. The fourth is to smooth the speed bumps of change. Change can be bumpy, right? We're not going to take that away, but I like to think of it sort of as the shock absorbers of change, right? It can smooth some of those speed bumps. They're still going to be there, but it might not be as painful. And if we can reduce some of the drama and some of the pain with change, that's a plus in my book. The final one is to strengthen morale. When people feel, we just heard you all talking about the need for better communication, the need for listening, for empathy. If we can offer that with our leadership, we're going to strengthen the morale, which means we're going to be able to retain the employees. And as someone mentioned, one of the biggest challenges is recruitment. If we have happy colleagues and it's a happy place to work, we can get along, we can work together effectively. We don't have to be best friends, but if we can work together effectively, not only does it help you retain your valuable employees, but you can attract the best employees as well. So it helps in that recruitment process. So there are many other benefits, but those are my top 5 for why that leadership is so important. So we'll continue on. Many of you may know this person. This is Brene Brown. She is a accomplished researcher and author. She's written many books. I happen to be a big fan. I've attended Dare to Lead training. And what I love is what she says is that a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and the processes. Here's the difference, though, and has the courage to develop them. It's one thing to be aware. It's another thing to have the courage to jump in. And in her research, she just surveyed recently hundreds of organizations. And across the board, no matter what kind of organization it was, people said what they wanted was more bravery in their leaders. They wanted them to have the courage to step forward. And I think that's really, really important to think about. And we're all leaders, so each of us having the opportunity and the courage to step forward. So I highly recommend, you'll see at the bottom of this slide, you can see where if you go to BreneBrown.com, you will see a lot. She has a lot of free resources there as well. I highly recommend them. She also talks about, and I believe that leadership is not about because it's only if for the corner office or the CEO, it really is each individual. She talks about the willingness to step up, put yourself out there, and lean into courage. And I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to do that when you have self-awareness. You know what your strengths are, you know who's on your team, you know where your strengths lie, where your challenges lie. It's a whole lot easier to be brave when you have that solid foundation of understanding that. So it's time, really, we need the leadership to be brave for all of us. So she talks about 3 things. That first, you can't get to courage without rumbling with vulnerability. Vulnerability is not easy. She talks about embrace the suck, meaning it's uncomfortable. And that's okay. As leaders in our organizations, whether it's your own self, whether it's your team, whether it's your organization, one to many, we need to be okay with saying, I don't know the answer. I need help, or whatever it might be. So we need to embrace that feeling of uncomfortableness, and as a leader, being willing to set the example to show that. Self-awareness and self-love matter. Who we are is how we lead. How can I lead somebody if I don't even know what lights me up, what brings me joy, what gives me energy, and what drains my energy? If I don't know that for myself, how am I going to know that for someone else? So it's really important to think about that. And who we are is how we lead. If we're in a place of feeling comfortable, we're going to lead a lot more strongly and more effectively than otherwise. I like her third one, that courage is contagious. Once we see, and I'm sure you've had this example where you see someone else, they're willing to raise their hand in a meeting or say something or bring up maybe the elephant in the room. it allows other people to do the same thing. So courage is contagious. I would also say negativity is contagious, and so is positivity. So let's put courage and positivity at the forefront. And part of that is learning and being willing to take the leap, as the person here on the slide is doing. So again, this is just a link to BreneBrown.com hubs. I don't get any kind of royalty for that. I like to share it because I think what she offers is pretty amazing. So when we think about building that courage to lead, really is becoming aware of your leadership style. And that's what DISC and Work of Leaders does. It helps you understand what you do well, and we talked about where your energy comes from and what drains your energy. We need to be intentional often. For me, I know that I am great with things like this. I love interacting with people. I love speaking. I am not as good when it comes to analytical, like for instance, doing my taxes, right? So I have to be very intentional about that. I have to do it for me first thing in the morning. I have to remove all distractions. And I'm going to be tired after 2 or 3 hours of doing that. Doesn't mean I can't do it and be successful, but it's understanding how my workflow needs to go. I can't leave that till 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon. I'm not going to be as effective. So becoming aware of our leadership style. The second is to identify the strengths and develop opportunities, not only for me, but for my team members. It's really important that all teams, that we have as many different people as we can on our team so that we have those different perspectives. If we all are of the same style, we can fall into that yes culture, right? We need folks to raise a hand or slow us down or speed us up, whatever it might be. Thinking about, the gentleman that you see in the plane here, thinking about those new kinds of things, whether it's the new airplane they're building, or maybe you're learning your pilot's license, it can be uncomfortable, and that's okay because we can work together. Incorporating leaders at all levels. Again, this is not just for the C-suite. This is no matter where you are in the organization, you are the leader for whom you've been waiting. So making sure that we incorporate that at all levels. And creating a culture of leadership. It's done by example. I was working with a client yesterday, and she talked about the fact that her manager, maybe because things are going smoothly, she never is in touch with her, and she loses that communication. And it's really hard. And so it feels like she doesn't have a good model for leadership when she's working with her teams. So it's important to create that culture of courage, of vulnerability, and of knowledge and self-awareness. So one of the things we want to think about is, what is your leadership style? Many of you may have taken DISC. If you've not taken DISC, let me give you just a quick overview. When you take the Work of Leaders assessment, the foundation is of DISC. So you'll see here there's a circle, D, I, S, and C. The I is lowercase only for a marketing perspective, so there's nothing less important about that. But these 4 different quadrants, when you take the assessment, you'll be plotted here somewhere on this circle. The D represents dominance. The I is influence. S is steadiness. And C is conscientiousness. And you'll see that there are priorities around the circle. So for instance, the green quadrant with D for dominance, folks tend to have these priorities: the resolute, commanding, and pioneering. You will see that the folks in the I, it's still the pioneering as well, but energizing and affirming. For our S's, affirming, inclusive, and humble. And our C's tend to be humble, deliberate, and resolute. So you are more than a dot. Every person that does this is more than a dot. What I find so fascinating about this is it's pretty spot on. I would say 90 to 95% of what comes out in the report has been spot on for myself and for people who have done that. Here's the thing: we might be plotted in one area, though we use all 4 styles. We all use D, I, S, and C individually, and the best teams are the ones that have people with all of those as well. We want to make sure that we're having all of those, but we might have a primary style. Here's how I liken it. Say in your home, you love to cook. Maybe you love to cook. What room are you going to spend most of your time in? Probably the kitchen. So the kitchen might be your home base, or where your primary style is in this case. Doesn't mean you don't use the other rooms of the house. You definitely use the other rooms of the house, but you might spend more of your time in the kitchen. So that's sort of how this plays out. So what's your primary style? We use all four, but part of what is so helpful is to not only know where my strengths are, but then to also understand the people I'm interacting with on a regular basis. What are their styles? I think especially we know intellectually that we don't all approach things the same way, but especially when things get heated or we're under pressure or we get into conflict, we tend to get blinders that don't help us see the big picture. And so having that knowledge about each other, we can have more of those courageous conversations. Let's see. Okay. And in the four, I will tell you of the four primary, there can be some blends. Let me go back to that for a minute. So there are also people, you could come up as a D, an I, an S, a C, but you could also be a DI, an IS, a CS, a DC. So there are 12 actual styles that are available to those. So what's great about Work of Leaders is it's the basic disc that we just talked about briefly. It takes it to a whole nother level for leadership. It talks about our priorities and tendencies with three areas: creating a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. So creating a vision is, where are we going to go? And there are certain elements within creating a vision that make us more successful in that or not. Building alignment is, are we getting the people on the bus? Are we getting everybody aligned so that we can all go together toward that finish line, whatever it might be? And championing execution is getting the ball over the finish, right? Is getting to those goals, getting to success, getting to where we need to be. So it's exploring how we play to our strengths and overcome challenges. I don't believe in strengths and weaknesses. I believe in strengths and challenges, because often the same things that are our best strengths are the same things that can cause us challenges. For instance, I think most of us would probably agree that confidence is a great attribute. It's good to be confident. What if we're overly confident? We might come across as arrogant. And most of us don't wake up and say, I want to be arrogant today, right? We don't want to do that. So it's about understanding where our strengths lie and where our challenges lie and how we can work with that. Identify strategies to develop preferred behaviors and learn to adapt. There's nothing about DISC or Work of Leaders that's asking you to necessarily change who you are. That's not at all what it's about. It's about, I think about as flexing like a muscle. It's something that we can flex. It's small changes we can make to adjust. It's about flexing and adjusting, not who we are, but maybe the approach we take or how we speak to somebody and how we make that work. It's making sure that we can bring our best self. When we think about communication, I think about it as sender and receiver, right? We want that communication to be successful, and there's a lot of noise that can get in the way. If we can flex a little bit as either the sender or the receiver and be more effective in getting that point across or getting that information shared or asking those questions, we have a much higher chance of being successful as well. This is, we want to, I don't know if you can put in the chat, Kayla, we want to give you a link. There's a very short video. We're not going to take the time to show it here, but there is a, Everything DISC has a video that kind of gives you a quick overview of crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. So we'll make sure we have that either in the chat or the Q&A. So if you want to copy and paste that for later afterwards, there are a lot of great resources there to help you understand that for the Everything DISC Work of Leaders. So this graphic, I think, is really helpful. It starts to give you an idea of how do we handle our communication and direction wherever we are. So take a look at this. You'll see, like on outside the D, right in the middle, you'll see one of the arrows goes to control, okay? So control is important, but someone with a D priority, with a D leadership style, likes to have control. Doesn't mean others don't, but that is one of the primary drivers for a D. If we look across, if you go across the circle to the blue S, you'll see harmony as one of the things that's really important for an S. Is very much all about the team, making sure that there's harmony among everyone. You can see that already if we have someone who's feeling a need for control and someone who's feeling a need for harmony, we can have conflict just based on the different styles that people have, right? So it's understanding that and knowing where I fit and what's my channel or what's my leadership style. Conversely, if we look to the right, to the eye, to the red eye area, we see expression, because our eyes are generally very expressive. They use hand gestures. They're very optimistic and very energetic. If we look to the C's, if we go across diagonally to the yellow to the C, we see precision, because our C's are very much about accuracy and detail and getting it right. So precision, maybe not as expressive as an I, and yet not more driven by accuracy and precision. Here's the thing I want to make sure people understand with all of this. There's no one style that's better or worse. There's no one style that says, oh, leaders need to be a D, I, S, or C. It's about knowing where you show up, how you show up in the world, what leadership traits you bring, and leveraging those. Then when you have a team, leveraging those so you can understand where everyone falls. I just facilitated a retreat yesterday using DISC, and for the ahas that people would say, oh, now I understand why you do it that way. And it was a small group, but everybody, all 4 styles were represented, which is such a gift. So we spent a lot of time talking about how they can leverage their differences, but hopefully, for the better, so they can make that work. So learning to adapt to the channels. You'll see that we also talk about, for the C's and S's, if we think about that, stability, predictability, those are things that are really important. Our D's and I's are very much about progress. They're open to change sometimes more easily. So they're willing to go there, right? And so you can have conflict there. If we go down the middle of the DISC, the D's and C's tend to be more task-driven. The I's and S's are more people-driven. It doesn't mean that the D's and C's don't like people, and it doesn't mean the I's and S's can't accomplish tasks. It's about motivation and what drives us. And when we understand that, it is like a key to the treasure chest, not only for ourselves, but understanding that with our teams. It's so that our needs are met. When I asked you about what you want in more of your leaders, Brene Brown talks about bravery. People talked about empathy, listening. Part of that is some of us come by that more naturally than others. So maybe if that's something you already do naturally, that's terrific. Maybe listening is not one of your best skills, and that's a skill you can work on. It's a challenge that as a leader that you want to bring more to the table. And so you can do that way. So we want to make sure we think about that. When I talk about work of leaders, in addition to DISC, we have this wonderful three steps of DISC. It is crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. So there are the 3 steps there, and then there are 3 drivers under each one. So under crafting a vision, we have exploration, boldness, and testing assumption. So let's think about it. When we're crafting a vision, we need to think broadly, right? We need to think, what are the possibilities? What can be? We need to remain open. We need to hear from other people. We need to be bold. We need to have kind of an audacious goal. We need to think big. Maybe we aim for here, and maybe we only get to here, but that's further than we've ever been before. Testing assumptions, asking for other people's opinions. Crafting a vision, we need to be thinking how we can do that in the big picture. The second step is building alignment. Once we've set that goal or that vision, how do we get everybody on board the bus? How do we get everybody moving in the same direction? If you've ever been in an organization where it felt like there were competing priorities and it was hard to know which way to go, it's really important to build that alignment so everybody's moving in the same direction. So clarity, how is the messaging? Is it clear? If you've got a small group of 2 or 3 people, it's pretty easy to keep it clear. The larger that you get to the organization, whether you're communicating via email, whether you're communicating verbally in a town hall, however you're doing it, you need to make sure it's consistent and clear. The dialogue. Building alignment is not about just saying, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. It's making sure that you're getting the buy-in. How do we get the buy-in for folks? You'll have some folks that are early adopters that absolutely, let's go. Others who are a little slower to get there, but we need to bring everybody on. So how do we do that? and inspiration, especially when you think of long-term projects you've been a part of. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it seems like a slog and it can be really hard. Well, our job as leaders is to make sure we're encouraging people along the way so that we keep that building alignment along the way. And sometimes we have to go back to crafting a vision. Sometimes this isn't always a straight line, because sometimes maybe we're finding that things have changed, or we have to go back and revisit the vision. The third step in this is championing execution, momentum, keeping, especially on those longer term projects, keeping that momentum going. How is it structured? Do we have a plan in place? Are we paying attention? Are we just blindly going to the goal, or are we stopping and looking around and saying, oh, wait, what about this? There's a squeaky wheel. Let's address the squeaky wheel before it falls off and we go off track. It's understanding that. One of the best parts about work of leaders I love is the feedback portion. Some of us are great at addressing problems head on. I don't know about you, but normally if we don't address problems, do they get smaller or do they get bigger? For most of us, they tend to get bigger over time. So the importance of addressing problems early, so it's a lot easier to address them. And offering praise. This is one area that I feel we could all use some help in. Most organizations and most individuals, this doesn't come naturally to them. Some people do, and it's a wonderful strength, but not everybody. So I think it's really important to see, because even some people generationally, or because of the industry, I worked with a group of dairy farmers. They didn't see the benefit of praise. And what we had to explain was, depending on generational, depending on different styles, everybody likes appreciation and a pat on the back here and there, right? Everybody likes to know that they need to have the feedback. So understanding how that works is very, very important. We want to think about that. So there are the 3 steps. First, there's the DISC, understanding style, and then we take it into a little bit more detail. This is what the continua look like. So for each of the, I shared, there were the three areas: crafting a vision, building alignment, championing execution. Then you have the 3 drivers under each, and then you have behavioral continua that you'll see that look like this. So for instance, under testing assumptions, we have testing assumptions, and then that looking at are we seeking counsel and exploring implications? When you get the report, you will see that the two dots on either end, and then there are 3 hash marks. The bigger hash mark is in the middle, which shows where the middle is. You are plotted, each person who does this is plotted somewhere on this continua. Not everyone is going to be in the far right. The right hash to the seek counsel, for instance, is considered a best practice. No one in the history of DISC ever has all of their continua following the best practice. What's helpful, though, is to see where we fall on these kinds of things, and we can make small adjustments. So in this case with vision, it's important to seek counsel. You see to the left, deciding independently. It's not bad to have that gift of deciding independently, but it's contextual. Do I want to decide independently when I'm in the visioning stage? That's going to be problematic. We want to seek counsel and hear from other people and not just be deciding on my own. See the difference there? It's contextual. The other is push forward. I think we all agree, especially in the execution stage, we need to push forward. We need to keep the ball moving. We need progress. At the same time, in the visioning section, when we're in the visioning stage, we need to explore implications. We need to have some patience. Those of us who want to just get it done, we need to slow down a little bit and take the time to seek the counsel, to explore implications. Have we thought about this, or this before we finalize that? Pushing forward and deciding independently are all fabulous skills. Those are great skills, but we want to put them in the right place at the right time. So what's great about working with a team is you can find out where everybody falls on this. So for instance, for me, I like to decide independently, and the visioning does not come easily to me. So I need to know that when I'm in the visioning stage, I really need to pull back and be patient with myself so that I can be a part and make that a more successful achievement of getting to creating the vision that we want to achieve. So I hope that makes sense. So a quick summary in talking about and being leaders, I want to talk about the fact that change is constant, right? Change is absolutely constant. So courage is required. Wouldn't you like to have as many tools in your toolbox, right? That's what Work of Leaders can do. It can help you see not what's wrong, but what your strengths are and small things that you can do to be an effective leader. And it is like a treasure map of understanding how to work with other people, the people you work with most often, to understand how they operate. It also minimizes conflict. Adam Grant talks in his book about Think Again about task and relational conflict. Relational conflict is it's more interpersonal and it's a lot harder to untangle. Task conflict is about the task at hand. And if we can address the task at hand conflict, which we can when we understand a lot of it can be just style, we keep it from becoming relational and we're more successful in moving forward, because not all conflict is bad, but we want to make sure it's the right kind of conflict. Number two, self-awareness is key to unlocking that potential, both for ourselves and for our teams. Work of Leaders is an excellent tool to help you and your organization become more effective. It is a wonderful way, again, to have knowledge. Knowledge is power. So again, if we can be more effective, we can increase our bottom line, reduce the drama and conflicts that can occur, especially when we think about many of us are working remotely or we have hybrid work, maybe some of us are in person. Nobody is immune from these kinds of things. So we want to reduce it as much as possible. Increasing innovation, I think in our rapidly changing world, that's more important than ever. We can't wait for the change to come. We have to be anticipating it. Reducing the pain of change, right? As I talked about, the shock absorbers, and increasing morale and retention. To give you an idea, to understand something very simple, say you're having a fundraiser for a local organization. You've got D's, I's, S's, and C's. You're going to have a different group of people. Maybe the D's are the folks who set the overall goal. You're going to have I's, you're going to be the great people. They are the people. So they're going to be selling the tickets, promoting the event. Your S's, who are about steadiness and about team, are going to be the great ones to volunteer and keep the volunteers in line, right? And be there for the volunteers and coordinate them. And your C's, who are detail-oriented, accuracy, they're going to be the ones to be handling the money, handling the finance. That's very basic. It's helpful to understand if we had all D's or all I's or all S's or all C's working on the program, it might not be as effective. So it's about leveraging our own strengths and leveraging the strengths of the group. So I hope that's a quick overview of DISC and Work of Leaders. At this point, I'm going to bring Sandy Bateman, who's our Director of Organizational Development and Learning, to share with you some of the resources that are available to you today as a result of being part of our webinar.
Thank you, Liz. That was an exceptional overview of the best in leadership, and well done for a very complicated topic, but an important one. Thank you. We've gotten lots of comments on people love some of your analogies, so that was very helpful.
Well, thanks.
How do you get Work of Leaders? That's one question. And we are a distributor for Wiley Publishing, their assessment tools. They have been supporting the Everything DISC program for just under 10 years now. Some of you may have known DISC through the years. They've had different publishers, and there are different versions of DISC. So as Liz said earlier, the little I indicates it's Everything DISC. We love the Wiley Publishing version, the Everything DISC. That organization puts tons of research into their products. They're constantly updating the products. And what Work of Leaders was created not long after they started working, or just before they started working with Wiley, to incorporate some of the best practices in leadership. And they use some of the authors who are part of the Wiley Publishing business side. To get the DISC assessments, if you already have a distributor you work with, you can contact them. If you don't have a distributor, then you can contact us and we'll be happy to work with you. DISC assessments are not available publicly. You do need to go through a distributor because, again, the program is so strong, it's important that you understand it, you deliver it well. And to do that, you can use a facilitation kit yourself. You can be certified in DISC, but you don't have to go through the training to be certified. You can purchase the kits. The kits have videos They have leader guides, they have handouts. They're wonderful tools.
Mhm.
So if you do not have this in your system and are interested, we can help you to purchase a kit. They retail for $14.95. And as a benefit from having listened in to our webinar today, we're offering a 20% discount. So we can make that available for $11.95. It gives a free virtual facilitation now, as well as in-class facilitation for that tool. If you already have some kits and you have the Work of Leaders and it's an older version, you can always go in and upgrade to the newest one, and there's no charge. And the other thing that you can do, last month I talked about the online portal called Catalyst, which is a new aspect of Wiley's Everything Disc. It allows people to not only see their own style, but anybody else who's in that organization who has taken an assessment, and they can make comparisons between the two. They have ongoing learning, so they can get to videos and so forth. If you're interested in that new facilitation kit, you can upgrade to that new kit through the end of 2024 if you have any of the other facilitation kits from Wiley. Again, you go to their registration site and you upgrade by entering in your serial number. So we can make that, if you don't have the link for the registration site, we can make that available to you as well. And if you're just interested in the assessment themselves and don't want to do the facilitation, but just want to have people take the assessments, again, we can work with you to help make that happen. So any questions you have, info@jergroup.com, or at the end, you will see there's links to connect with Liz Summers or with John Wing, who is one of our business development. So Liz, you said, are there any questions, I think?
Yeah, I just was going to say, I know we have just a minute, literally, but if any questions in the Q&A, obviously you can reach out to us as well. But if you have any questions, we have a minute. If anybody wants to put one out there, we're happy to answer.
In the follow-up to you, we will send a PDF as well as a link to the video, and we'll make sure we put the link in there for the serial number upgrade registration, as well as to the videos that Liz referenced today.
Great. Well, I don't see any questions. Feel free to follow up, and thank you for participating today. We're glad you were here with us today.